When Billionaire CEO Marcus Sterling called her just another nobody who'll never amount to anything, he had no idea the quiet black waitress serving his champagne was actually the anonymous investor about to buy his failing hotel empire. In less than 24 hours, the woman he humiliated in front of Wall Street's elite would be signing the papers. That made her his boss, and teaching him the most expensive lesson of his life. The crystal chandeliers of the Meridian Grand Hotel cast dancing shadows across marble floors that had witnessed 1,000 power deals, but never a humiliation quite like this one. Angela moved between the tables with practiced grace, her movements fluid and nearly invisible, exactly how the wealthy preferred their service staff to be. The silver tray balanced on her palm held champagne worth more than most people's monthly rent, each flute catching the light like liquid gold. No one knew that the woman in the crisp black uniform had once commanded boardrooms where decisions worth billions were made. No one even noticed how her eyes tracked every conversation, every merger discussion, every hostile takeover being planned over caviar and aged whiskey. She was furniture to them. Expensive, functional furniture that moved and breathed and cleaned up their messes. But when Marcus Sterling, the billionaire CEO whose face graced Forbes covers and whose ego filled entire buildings, began loudly complaining about the hotel's pathetic quarterly projections and amateur management, she slowed her steps. Her fingers tightened imperceptibly on the tray as she heard him say, "This place is hemorrhaging money. If I wanted to, I could buy it tomorrow and fire every incompetent fool working here." Angela approached his table to refill glasses, moving with the same quiet efficiency she'd perfected over the past 2 years. Sterling barely glanced at her as she leaned in to pour, but his companion, a younger executive eager to impress, decided to make sport of the moment. "Careful there." The younger man smirked, gesturing at Angela. "You spill a drop on Mr. Sterling's suit, and you'll be paying it off for the rest of your life. That's assuming someone like you could even comprehend what a $15,000 suit means." Sterling laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the classical music. "TT, 15,000? Please, David. This one's custom from Milan, 30,000 minimum." He finally looked directly at Angela, his eyes cold and dismissive. "Though I doubt our friend here has seen that much money in her entire lifetime. What do you make, sweetheart? Minimum wage plus tips from people who actually matter?" Angela's hand remained steady as she finished pouring. "Will there be anything else, sir?" "Actually, yes." Sterling leaned back, enjoying his audience. "I'm curious. Do you even understand what we're discussing here? Acquisitions, market capitalization, leveraged buyouts? Or do those words just sound like a foreign language to someone like you?" The table of executives chuckled. Angela straightened, meeting his gaze for just a moment. Long enough for something to flicker in her eyes that made Sterling's smile falter slightly. "I understand perfectly." "Mr. Sterling," she said quietly. "Oh, really?" His voice dripped condescension. "Then tell me, what would you do with this failing hotel? Since you clearly have such insight while serving drinks." Angela set down the champagne bottle with deliberate care. "I'd start by examining the debt structure. The hotel's over-leveraged with variable-rate loans that are crushing cash flow in this interest-rate environment. I'd restructure the debt, convert the top 3 floors to luxury condos for immediate capital injection, and pivot the restaurant to a partnership model with celebrity chefs to drive foot traffic. The conference facilities are underutilized. Corporate retreats and tech conferences would triple that revenue within 18 months. The table fell silent. Sterling's face flushed red. Did you just eavesdrop on our— You were speaking quite loudly, sir." Angela picked up her tray. "Will there be anything else?" Sterling stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "What's your name?" "Angela, sir." "Well, Angela," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "let me explain something to you. You're nobody, a nobody who serves drinks to people who actually build empires. You can parrot what you overhear, but you'll never be anything more than what you are right now. Invisible, insignificant, and completely irrelevant to people like me. What they didn't know was that Angela had just received a call 3 hours earlier. The call she'd been waiting 2 years for. The shell company she'd built in shadows had finally accumulated enough capital. And with just one signature, she was about to own everything Marcus Sterling held dear. Because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone refuses to see. Before we continue this incredible story of sweet vindication, if you've ever been underestimated or dismissed because of how you look, where you work, or who people assume you are, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel brings you real stories of underdogs who turned the tables on their oppressors in the most spectacular ways. Rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments. How satisfying would it be to see someone like Marcus Sterling get exactly what he deserves? And if you've ever had a moment where you proved someone completely wrong about you, share it below. Our community of over 2 million believers in justice loves hearing how everyday people showed their true power. Now, let's see how Angela, the nobody waitress, became the owner of a billionaire's empire in less than 24 hours. Angela Mitchell had worked at the Meridian Grand Hotel for exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days. Every morning, she arrived at 5:30 a.m., an hour before her shift, to read the financial news in the break room while the kitchen staff prepped for breakfast service. She polished silverware until it gleamed, arranged tables with mathematical precision, and served some of the wealthiest people in New York City as if she were nothing more than a shadow with hands. The executives and dealmakers walked by her as if she were part of the wallpaper. Elegant, necessary, but ultimately forgettable. They discussed billion-dollar mergers while she refilled their water glasses, planned hostile takeovers while she cleared their plates, and celebrated destroying companies while she served their champagne. Not one of them ever wondered why her eyes lingered on their contracts, or why she sometimes smiled when they got their numbers wrong. But Angela watched. She always watched. On that Thursday evening, the hotel buzzed with more energy than usual. The quarterly investors' gala had brought together the city's financial elite, and Marcus Sterling held court at the center table like a king among peasants. His voice carried across the ballroom as he regaled his audience with stories of his latest conquest. A tech startup he'd bought and stripped for parts, leaving 300 employees jobless, but his portfolio 50 million richer. Angela moved closer, ostensibly to clear empty glasses from nearby tables. Those words weren't foreign to her. Leveraged buyout, debt restructuring, EBITDA multiples. They were the language she'd spoken fluently in another life. Before everything changed, as she reached for an empty champagne flute, she heard Sterling say something that made her pause. The Meridian Grand is ripe for the taking. The owner's grandson has no idea what he's doing. Look at these occupancy rates. 60% in peak season. It's practically begging for someone with vision to take over. David, the young executive, leaned in eagerly. Are you considering making an offer? Considering? Sterling laughed. I've already had my people run the numbers. This place is worth maybe 70 million on paper, but with the debt they're carrying, I could probably steal it for 45, 50 tops. Fire half the staff, convert the lower floors to retail, flip it in 2 years for double. Angela's hand closed around the glass a bit too tightly. Excuse me, gentlemen, she said softly, reaching between them for another empty flute. May I refresh your drinks? Sterling didn't even look at her. Whatever the house champagne is, sure. Though God knows why a place claiming to be 5-star serves that swamp water. Perhaps, Angela said carefully. The issue isn't the champagne, but the hotel's procurement strategy. They're locked into a supplier contract that's marking up premium brands by 40%. A simple renegotiation could. Sterling's head snapped up. his eyes narrowing. "Excuse me?" Angela straightened, keeping her expression neutral. "My apologies, sir. I shouldn't have—" "No, no," Sterling said, his voice taking on a dangerous edge. "Please, continue. Tell us more about procurement strategies. I'm fascinated to hear a waitress's insights on hotel management." The entire table had gone quiet, 12 pairs of eyes fixed on Angela. She could feel the weight of their amusement, their condescension, their absolute certainty that she was about to humiliate herself. "I simply meant, what's your education?" Sterling interrupted. "High school? GED? Let me guess. You took some online course about hospitality, and now you think you understand business? I have experience in experience." Sterling stood, using his full height to tower over her. "Sweetheart, carrying trays isn't experience. Cleaning up after your betters isn't experience. You want to know what experience is? It's building a company from nothing to a billion-dollar valuation. It's making decisions that affect thousands of lives. It's having the power to buy and sell places like this on a whim." He gestured dismissively at her uniform. You're just another nobody pretending to be somebody. Another servant with delusions of relevance." The word servant hit Angela like a physical blow, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled. A small, private smile that would have worried Sterling if he'd been paying attention. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Sterling," she said quietly. "I'm nobody. Just someone who serves your drinks and cleans your messes. I apologize for overstepping." Sterling sat back down, satisfied with her submission. "That's better. Know your place, and you'll keep your job. Step out of line again, and I'll make sure you never work in this city again." "Understood?" "Perfectly, sir." Angela walked away with measured steps, her tray steady, her face calm. But beneath the surface, something had finally snapped. 2 years of patience, 2 years of planning, 2 years of being invisible while rebuilding everything she'd lost. It all crystallized in that moment. She set down her tray in the service station and pulled out her phone. One text message, 5 words that would change everything. "Execute the purchase. Tonight, all." Marcus Sterling had no idea he'd just insulted the woman who, in 6 hours, would own the very ground he stood on. But he would learn, how he would learn that sometimes the nobody in the room is the most dangerous somebody you'll ever meet. 3 hours after the confrontation, the investors' gala was reaching its crescendo. The band played jazz standards, while deals worth millions were sketched on napkins and sealed with handshakes. Angela continued her rounds, but something in her bearing had changed. She moved with the same efficiency, but there was a purposefulness to it now, as if she were counting down to something only she could see. Marcus Sterling's table had grown louder with each round of drinks, his voice cutting through the music as he held court. "The truth is," he was saying, "most people are exactly where they deserve to be. Take our waitress friend from earlier. Angela, was it? Perfect example. Some people are meant to serve, others are meant to lead. It's not cruel. It's just nature." David laughed sycophantically. "She really thought she could lecture you on business strategy." "The delusion is almost sad." "It's not delusion," Sterling corrected, swirling his whiskey. "It's ignorance. She hears fragments of real conversations, picks up buzzwords, and thinks she understands. Like teaching a parrot to say merger and acquisition. The bird doesn't know what it means. It just mimics sounds." Angela was refilling water glasses at the adjacent table when she heard this. Her hand stilled for just a moment before continuing its work. The couple at the table noticed her pause. "Don't let him bother you, dear," the elderly woman said kindly. "Marcus Sterling is known for being difficult." Angela smiled genuinely at her. "Thank you, ma'am, but he doesn't bother me at all. In fact, he's about to provide me with enormous entertainment." Before the woman could ask what she meant, Angela's phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly. A message from her lawyer. "Contracts signed. Transfer complete. You now own 78% of Meridian Grand Hotel Group." Congratulations, Ms. Mitchell. Angela closed her eyes for a brief moment, then opened them with a clarity that seemed to brighten the entire room. She picked up a fresh tray of champagne and walked directly to Sterling's table. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying a different quality now, still professional, but with an undertone of something Sterling couldn't quite place. "I wanted to apologize again for my earlier presumption." Sterling waved dismissively. "Already forgotten. Though I hope you've learned—" "Oh, I've learned a great deal, Mr. Sterling." Angela set down the champagne with deliberate care. "I've learned that you value this hotel at $45 million. I've learned you plan to fire half the staff. I've learned you think the current owner's grandson is incompetent." She straightened, meeting his eyes directly. "All valuable information." Sterling's eyes narrowed. "Have you been eavesdropping on?" "You speak quite loudly, sir. It's hard not to hear." Angela pulled out her phone, glancing at it. "Oh, this is interesting. Mr. Sterling, are you familiar with Phoenix Equity Partners?" The blood drained from Sterling's face. Phoenix Equity Partners was the mysterious firm that had been quietly buying distressed hospitality assets across the city. No one knew who was behind it, but their offers were always precisely calculated, always perfectly timed. "What about them?" he asked carefully. "They just acquired controlling interest in the Meridian Grand Hotel Group. 78%, to be exact. The transaction was completed." She checked her phone again. 17 minutes ago." David laughed nervously. "And you know this how? Did you overhear someone?" "No," Angela said simply. "I know because I am Phoenix Equity Partners." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the band seemed to quiet, as if sensing the shift in the room's energy. Sterling's glass stopped halfway to his lips. "That's—" he started, then stopped. "You're lying." Angela pulled out a second phone, a different one, sleek and expensive, and showed him the screen. There it was, the confirmation from the Securities and Exchange Commission, the transfer documents, the banking confirmations, all with her name, Angela Renee Mitchell, CEO and sole proprietor of Phoenix Equity Partners. "Impossible," Sterling breathed. "You're a waitress. You've been serving drinks here for 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days, Angela finished. "Every single day, listening to men like you discuss your deals, your strategies, your weaknesses. Do you know how much intelligence can be gathered by someone you refuse to see? How many trade secrets are spilled to someone you consider furniture?" Sterling stood abruptly, his chair crashing backward. "This is fraud. This is business, Mr. Sterling. Just like you taught me 5 minutes ago. Some people are meant to lead, others to serve. The only question now is, which one are you?" The entire ballroom had gone silent, all eyes on the confrontation. Angela stood perfectly calm, while Sterling's face cycled through rage, disbelief, and something that looked almost like fear. "You won't get away with this," he said, his voice low and threatening. "I'll bury you in litigation. You'll do nothing," Angela interrupted. "Because in approximately 1 hour, the New York Times will be running a story about how Marcus Sterling was outsmarted by a waitress he called Nobody. How you revealed your entire takeover strategy to someone you thought was beneath notice. Your investors will love that, I'm sure, especially the ones who trusted you with their pension funds." She turned to address the room, her voice carrying clearly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. Champagne is on the house. Literally, now that I own it." As she walked away, she heard Sterling's voice, desperate now. "Wait, we need to talk about—" "We'll talk tomorrow, Mr. Sterling," Angela said without turning around. "In my office. The one that used to belong to the owner's grandson. 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. I hate it when my employees waste my time." In her modest apartment in Queens, Angela sat at her kitchen table with a box she hadn't opened in 2 years. The laminate surface was a far cry from the mahogany desk she'd once owned, But it held the weight of her history just the same. She pulled out a leather portfolio, its pages yellowed, but the content still sharp. Mitchell Enterprises, a decade of excellence in hospitality management. The photographs showed a different Angela. Power suits instead of service uniforms, speaking at podiums instead of taking orders, shaking hands with governors and CEOs instead of clearing their tables. Back then, this was her language. EBITDA margins, RevPAR optimization, market penetration strategies. She'd built Mitchell Enterprises from a single boutique hotel in Atlanta to a chain of 17 properties across the Southeast. The last time she'd touched these documents, she'd been standing in a hospital room watching her mother fade away. Pancreatic cancer. Aggressive, merciless, and expensive beyond imagination. The experimental treatment in Switzerland had cost everything. Her company, her savings, her future. She'd liquidated it all without hesitation, sold to the highest bidder in a fire sale that barely covered the medical bills. "Baby," her mother had whispered near the end, "I'm so sorry. You lost everything because of me." "No, Mama," Angela had replied, holding her frail hand. "I chose love over money. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times." Her mother had passed anyway, 3 weeks later. Angela had stood at the funeral with $17 in her checking account and a heart so broken she thought it might never heal. The job market was cruel to a former CEO without a company. Overqualified for everything. Too proud to beg from former competitors who now owned pieces of what she'd built. So she'd done something unexpected. She disappeared, became invisible, took a job at the Meridian Grand Hotel as a waitress, where no one would recognize the former wunderkind of hospitality. She served drinks to people who'd once sought her advice, cleaned up after executives who'd tried to poach her talent, smiled politely while they discussed strategies she'd pioneered. But Angela wasn't just surviving, she was learning. Every conversation she overheard was intelligence. Every financial document carelessly left on tables was photographed. Every drunken confession about weaknesses and vulnerabilities was catalogued. She lived on minimum wage and tips, but every extra penny went into a savings account under a shell company she'd created. Phoenix Equity Partners. The plan had formed slowly, methodically. She knew the hotel industry inside and out, knew which properties were distressed, which owners were desperate, which debts were coming due. She started small. A parking garage here, a supply contract there. Always through Phoenix, always anonymous. Each tiny profit rolled into the next investment, compound interest working its patient magic. 2 years. That's how long she'd given herself to accumulate enough capital to make a real play. The Meridian Grand was never supposed to be the target. She'd had her eye on smaller properties, easier acquisitions. But then she'd learned about the owner's grandson, his inexperience, the massive debt load crushing the property. She'd done the math. If she leveraged everything, took on strategic partners who didn't need to know her identity, she could just barely make it work. Tonight wasn't supposed to be the night. She'd planned to wait another month, maybe 2. But Marcus Sterling had changed that with his cruelty, his casual dismissal of her humanity. When he'd called her a nobody, a servant, someone who would never matter, something inside her had crystallized into diamond-hard determination. Angela picked up another document from the box, her MIT MBA diploma, earned at 23. Below it, a photo from Forbes featuring her at 28, with the headline, "The Hospitality Prodigy Revolutionizing Luxury Service." She traced her finger over the image of her younger self, so confident, so certain the world was hers to conquer. "You were right," she whispered to the photo. "Just took a detour, that's all." Her phone buzzed with messages from her lawyer, her investment partners, journalists who'd somehow already gotten wind of the story. "Tomorrow, The financial world would wake up to a sensation. The mysterious Phoenix Equity Partners revealed as a waitress who'd pulled off one of the most audacious takeovers in hospitality history. But tonight, Angela opened her laptop and began working on what really mattered, the restructuring plan that would save the Meridian Grand without firing a single employee. She pulled up spreadsheets, financial models she'd been refining in secret for months. The debt could be restructured with the creditors she'd already been quietly negotiating with. The restaurant could be transformed with the celebrity chef who owed her a favor from her previous life. The conference facilities could be marketed to the tech companies she'd been studying. "There it is," she whispered, looking at the numbers that finally aligned. It was always there. Marcus Sterling thought he'd bought and sold companies. Angela had rebuilt an empire from ashes while serving champagne to men who thought she was invisible. Tomorrow, she would show them all that the greatest power isn't in being seen. It's in seeing everything while others assume you're blind. She closed the laptop and stood, looking out her window at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere out there, Sterling was probably raging, making phone calls, trying to understand how he'd been so thoroughly outmaneuvered. "You were wrong about one thing, Mr. Sterling," she said to the night. "I'm not nobody. I'm somebody who chose to become nobody, so I could become everything you never saw coming." The Meridian Grand Hotel was still asleep when Angela stepped through the employee entrance at 4 a.m., 3 hours before her usual shift. But today, she wasn't here to serve breakfast or polish silverware. She entered through her usual route, but instead of heading to the service areas, she took the executive elevator using a key card that had arrived by courier at midnight. The executive floor was silent, all marble and mahogany and the lingering scent of expensive cologne. Angela walked past portraits of previous owners, men who'd built this institution over a century. At the end of the hall, the owner's office, now her office, waited with its panoramic view of Central Park. No hesitation. Angela had spent 2 years preparing for this moment, and she moved with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly what needed to be done. She opened her laptop and began executing the plan she'd refined 1,000 times in her mind. First, the all-staff email, scheduled for 6:20 a.m. Subject line: Important announcement regarding Meridian Grand ownership change. The message was warm but professional, assuring every employee that their jobs were safe, that the new ownership valued their service and dedication. She specifically mentioned the housekeeping staff, the kitchen workers, the valets, the invisible army that really ran the hotel. Second, the press release to the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Financial Times. Phoenix Equity Partners acquires Meridian Grand Hotel Group in strategic takeover. She included just enough detail to intrigue, but not enough to satisfy, ensuring requests for interviews would flood in by morning. Third, the restructuring documents for the bank, already drafted and ready for signature. The debt would be converted to a hybrid instrument, part equity, part preferred shares, reducing the monthly burden by 60% while giving the creditors upside potential. Fourth, contracts with 3 celebrity chefs who'd been waiting for the right opportunity to expand into New York. The restaurant would be transformed into a 3-concept dining destination, each chef bringing their own Michelin-starred reputation. When she finished, Angela looked at the grandfather clock in the corner. 5:47 a.m. The hotel would wake soon. She walked to the window and watched the city stirring to life, remembering all the mornings she'd arrived in darkness to serve people who never wondered about her life beyond these walls. At 6 a.m. exactly, her phone exploded with notifications. The all-staff email had sent, and within minutes, the employee WhatsApp groups were buzzing. She could imagine the shock, the disbelief, the slowly dawning realization that Angela, quiet, invisible Angela, was now their boss. At 6:15 a.m., the head of housekeeping, Maria, knocked on the office door. "Come in," Angela called. Maria entered, her face a mix of confusion and awe. "Angela, is this real?" "Very real, Maria," Angela smiled. "And overdue. How long have you been here? 20 years?" 22, Maria whispered. "Then you know this place better than anyone. I want you to head a new Employee Excellence Committee. Your first task, identify every systemic problem the management has ignored. We're going to fix this place from the ground up." Maria's eyes filled with tears. Management never asked our opinion about anything." "I'm not them," Angela said simply. "I've been where you are. I know what it's like to be invisible." That changes today. By 7 a.m., the financial press had picked up the story. Angela's phone rang constantly. She ignored it all except one call from the New York Times reporter she'd specifically chosen. "Ms. Mitchell," the reporter said, "this is extraordinary. A waitress secretly buying the hotel where she worked? How did you—" "I wasn't always a waitress," Angela said carefully. "But being one taught me more about business than any boardroom ever did. When you're invisible, you see everything. You hear every weakness, every opportunity, every secret. Marcus Sterling and men like him treat service workers like furniture. They never realize that furniture with ears and eyes and brains can be very, very dangerous." Speaking of Sterling, he's called our office 6 times demanding we not run this story. Angela laughed. "I'm sure he has. Tell me, has he claimed it's fraud yet? Threatened lawsuits?" "Both, actually. Print it all. Every threat, every rage-filled quote. Let the world see who Marcus Sterling really is, when someone he considered beneath him outplays him at his own game." By 8:40 a.m., the hotel lobby was packed with employees who'd come in on their day off, all wanting to see if it was true. Angela walked through them in her usual uniform. She'd specifically chosen to wear it one last time. And the crowd parted in stunned silence. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice carrying across the marble expanse. "I know this is shocking. I know you have questions. Here's what you need to know. Your jobs are safe. Your benefits are increasing. Your voices will be heard. The Meridian Grand is going to become what it always should have been. A place that values every single person who makes it run, from the executives to the dishwashers." Someone started clapping. Then another. Soon, the entire lobby erupted in applause. At 8:45 a.m., Angela sat behind the massive oak desk, watching the door. At exactly 9:00 a.m., it opened. Marcus Sterling walked in, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. "This isn't over," he said without preamble. "Oh, Mr. Sterling," Angela said calmly, gesturing to the chair across from her. "It hasn't even begun." Marcus Sterling sat across from Angela, his hands clenched on the arms of the chair. Behind him stood his lawyer, 2 assistants, and what appeared to be a private investigator. Angela sat alone, serene, her hands folded on the desk that had belonged to titans of industry. "You want to know who I am?" she said before Sterling could speak. "So I'll tell you." She pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Sterling opened it, his eyes widening as he saw the documents inside. Forbes articles, Harvard Business Review case studies, photographs of Angela shaking hands with presidents and prime ministers. "Angela Renee Mitchell," she began, "founder and former CEO of Mitchell Enterprises, built a hospitality empire of 17 hotels from scratch, named Entrepreneur of the Year by 3 different organizations, MBA from MIT at 23, youngest person ever inducted into the International Hospitality Hall of Fame." Sterling's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. Sterling waved him off, his eyes fixed on the documents. "2.5 years ago," Angela continued, "my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The treatment cost everything. My company, my savings, my entire future. I sold it all, liquidated every asset to give her 6 more months of life. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes held depths Sterling couldn't fathom. She died anyway. I buried her with $17 to my name and a broken heart. That's... Sterling started, then stopped. I took the only job I could get without references, without having to explain why a CEO was applying for minimum wage work. I became a waitress here, and every single day, I served people who knew me in my previous life, but never recognized me. Because to them, service workers don't have faces. She stood, walking to the window, her reflection merging with the city beyond. You weren't the first to call me nobody, Mr. Sterling, but you were the last. While you and others like you discussed your deals, I listened. While you left sensitive documents on tables, I photographed them. While you got drunk and revealed your vulnerabilities, I took notes. That's corporate espionage, Sterling's lawyer interjected. Everything I learned was in public spaces, discussed openly in my presence. Angela cut him off. You simply forgot I was human. That's not illegal. It's just stupid. She turned back to face them. I rebuilt everything from nothing. Every tip, every extra shift, every penny saved went into Phoenix Equity Partners. I studied market patterns, identified distressed assets, made strategic plays. Small at first, a parking structure here, a supply contract there. Compound interest, Mr. Sterling. The most powerful force in the universe, Einstein called it. Sterling found his voice. Why the Meridian? Why not reveal yourself earlier? I wasn't ready. I needed more capital, more time. But then you... Angela smiled, a sharp expression. You called me a servant, said I should know my place, threatened to destroy my ability to work in this city. And I realized, why wait? Why not show you exactly what a nobody can do? This won't stand, Sterling said, but his voice lacked conviction. Your lawyers will tell you the acquisition is airtight. My lawyers are Brennan, Croft, and Associates. Perhaps you've heard of them? They've handled every major hospitality acquisition in the last decade, including, ironically, your attempted takeover of the Wingate chain last year, the one that failed because you underestimated the seller. Sterling's face went white. That was you? The shell company that outbid you? Yes. I sold those properties a month later for a 40% profit. That money went into buying this hotel. The room fell silent. Sterling's team exchanged nervous glances. Finally, his lawyer spoke. What do you want? Angela returned to her chair, every movement deliberate. Nothing from you. This isn't about revenge, Mr. Sterling. It's about justice. You see, I'm not going to fire you or humiliate you or destroy your reputation. You're doing that yourself. The recording of our interaction last night has already gone viral. Hashtag #NobodyCEO is trending. Sterling pulled out his phone, his face cycling through shades of red as he read. You recorded the hotel records, all public areas for security. I simply ensured that particular footage was preserved. Angela leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my hotel. You're going to tell anyone who asks that you were outplayed, fairly and legally. And you're going to think twice before treating another service worker as less than human. And if I don't, then I release the other recordings. The ones where you discussed bribing city officials for zoning changes. The ones where you laughed about destroying companies for sport. The ones where you used words to describe your female employees that would end your career instantly. Sterling stood abruptly. This is extortion. No, Angela said calmly. This is consequence. Something you've never faced before. As Sterling headed for the door, Angela called out, Oh, Mr. Sterling? One more thing. He turned, his face a mask of rage. I didn't leave hospitality, she said. Hospitality never left me. I just had to walk away for love. But walking away taught me something valuable. Sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what really matters. You wouldn't understand that. You've never loved anything more than yourself. Sterling slammed the door behind him. Angela sat back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Maria was standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Ms. Mitchell," Maria said, "the entire hotel staff is in the ballroom. They want to... they want to thank you." Angela stood, straightening her uniform one last time. "Then let's go see our team, Maria. Our real team. The people who actually make this place special." The next morning, Angela stepped into the Meridian Grand's ballroom like always, but something was fundamentally different. The space that had hosted countless power lunches and hostile takeovers was packed with people who usually remained invisible. Housekeepers, bellhops, kitchen staff, maintenance workers, valets. They stood in their uniforms, some still in their street clothes, having rushed in on their day off. The room fell silent as she entered, then erupted in thunderous applause. Angela stood there, overwhelmed, as hundreds of hands clapped for her. Not for her past achievements, not for her money, but for seeing them as human beings worthy of respect. "Thank you," said James, the head chef who'd worked 16-hour days for 15 years. "Thank you for remembering us." "You saved our jobs," added Patricia from laundry services. "Sterling would have fired half of us without thinking twice." Angela raised her hand for quiet. "I didn't save your jobs, you saved mine. Every day for 2 years, you showed me what real work looks like. What dedication means, what it takes to make something beautiful run smoothly while others take all the credit." She walked through the crowd, making eye contact with faces she'd worked alongside. People who'd shared their lunches with her when she couldn't afford her own, who'd covered her shifts when her grief became too heavy to bear. "Starting today," Angela announced, "every employee gets a 20% raise. Full health care coverage, including dental and vision. Profit sharing that ensures when the hotel succeeds, you succeed. And most importantly, a voice. Your suggestions, your insights, your expertise will be heard and valued." The celebration that followed was unlike anything the ballroom had ever seen. No champagne flutes and careful laughter, but genuine joy, tears, embraces between people who'd struggled together and would now rise together. Later that afternoon, Columbia Business School called. "Ms. Mitchell," the dean said, "we'd like to invite you to give our commencement address. Your story. It's exactly what our students need to hear." "I'll do it," Angela said. "Under one condition, I bring 5 of my employees with me. They'll share the stage, share their stories. Business students need to understand that success isn't just about those at the top. It's about everyone who makes an organization work." The dean paused, then laughed. "That's unconventional, but yes, absolutely yes." A week later, the invitation came from the White House. A state dinner honoring American entrepreneurs who'd overcome extraordinary challenges. Angela accepted, but requested that Maria, her head of housekeeping, be seated at her table. The protocol office was confused, but agreed. The Meridian Grand Hotel was transformed over the following months, but not in the way Sterling had envisioned. Instead of firing staff, Angela hired more, providing living wages that allowed employees to stop working multiple jobs. The restaurant didn't just partner with celebrity chefs, it also showcased dishes from the international staff, turning their family recipes into menu features. The Colombian line cook's grandmother's soup became the best-selling appetizer. The Nigerian doorman's jollof rice was featured in the New York Times food section. The hotel's occupancy rate soared to 95%. Not because Angela cut costs, but because she invested in people. Guests could feel the difference. Staff who were valued served with genuine warmth. Employees who were heard brought innovation. Workers who were respected created excellence. 6 months later, Angela stood in the packed Columbia Auditorium. Beside her on stage sat Maria, James, Patricia, and 2 others from the hotel. The graduates in their caps and gowns leaned forward, hungry for wisdom from someone who'd lost everything and built it back. They tell you in business school about ROI, about leveraged buyouts, about market disruption, Angela began. But they don't tell you the most important truth. The people you ignore on your way up are the ones who actually hold the power. The janitor who cleans your office knows your secrets. The waitress who serves your drinks hears your strategies. The driver who takes you home sees who you really are. She looked across the sea of young faces. I was you once. I thought success meant being seen, being recognized, being important. Then I lost everything and became invisible. And in that invisibility, I found a superpower. I saw how businesses really run. I learned that the executive who takes credit for success is usually standing on the shoulders of 100 people whose names they don't even know. Maria took the microphone next. I've cleaned offices for 22 years, she said, her accent thick but her voice strong. I've seen million-dollar deals made and broken. I've watched executives come and go. But Ms. Mitchell, Angela, she's the first one who ever asked my opinion about how to make things better. And you know what? My ideas saved the hotel $300,000 in the first month. The audience erupted in applause. The dean later said it was the most impactful commencement address in the school's history. A year after the takeover, Marcus Sterling's company filed for bankruptcy. His investors, shaken by the viral video of him berating Angela, had pulled their funds. His reputation in tatters, he'd made increasingly desperate deals until his empire collapsed. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature, "The Cost of Arrogance," how Marcus Sterling lost everything to the waitress he called nobody. Angela read the article in her office, not the executive suite, but a modest space she'd chosen on the second floor, close to the employee break room. She felt no satisfaction in Sterling's downfall, only a sense of cosmic justice. Her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Ms. Mitchell?" The voice was broken, desperate. "This is Marcus Sterling. I need help. I've lost everything. No one will even take my calls anymore. You're the only person who might understand." Angela was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Sterling, there's a small hotel in Queens that's hiring. They need someone to work the night shift at the front desk. Minimum wage plus tips. The manager owes me a favor. I can get you an interview. You're offering me a service job? I'm offering you a chance to learn what I learned. That there's dignity in every job. That the people you considered nobody are everybody. That sometimes you have to lose everything to understand what actually matters." The line was silent. "The interview is tomorrow, at 9 a.m., Angela continued. "Wear something simple. Be humble. Listen more than you speak. And Mr. Sterling? The other employees there, treat them with respect. They're the ones who'll teach you how to rebuild." She hung up without waiting for a response. That evening, Angela walked through her hotel, stopping to talk with the night shift coming on duty. She knew their names, their children's names, their dreams and struggles. The Meridian Grand had become the most sought-after hospitality workplace in New York, not because it paid the most, though it paid well, but because it was the only place where every single person was valued equally. "Ms. Mitchell," called out Thomas, the new night janitor. "Thank you for taking a chance on me. I know my resume wasn't much." "Thomas," Angela interrupted gently, "your resume was perfect. 2 years of unemployment after your factory closed, but you never gave up. 3 kids you raised alone after your wife passed. Volunteering at the food bank even when you needed help yourself. That tells me more about your character than any degree ever could." 2 years after that fateful night, when Marcus Sterling called her nobody, Angela Mitchell stood before the United Nations Global Compact, delivering a keynote on inclusive leadership. The Meridian Grand Hotel had become a case study taught at every major business school, not for its financial turnaround, though that was impressive, but for proving that valuing every employee equally wasn't just morally right, it was the most profitable strategy of all. "The greatest inefficiency in business," Angela told the Assembly of Global Leaders, "is the assumption that worth correlates with position. Every day, Billions of brilliant minds are dismissed because they wear the wrong uniform, have the wrong accent, or stand on the wrong side of the service counter. We don't have an innovation crisis. We have a recognition crisis. In the audience sat Maria, now Chief Operations Officer of the Meridian Grand. Beside her, James had become Director of Culinary Innovation. Throughout the room were former service workers who'd been promoted, their insights transforming not just one hotel, but an entire industry awakening to the value of its invisible workforce. Angela's phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at it after her speech. A photo from Marcus Sterling. He stood in a simple uniform at the Queen's Hotel, surrounded by his co-workers at what appeared to be a birthday celebration. His smile was genuine in a way it had never been in his CEO days. The message read, "Thank you for teaching me to see. I was nobody until I learned to see everybody." The lesson was simple but revolutionary. Every empire is built by those who are never seen. Every fortune stands on the shoulders of the dismissed. Every success story has 100 unnamed authors. The question isn't whether you'll encounter angels in disguise. It's whether you'll recognize them when they're standing right in front of you, holding a tray, pushing a mop, or quietly changing your world while you look right through them. Angela returned to her hotel that evening, not through the executive entrance, but through the employee door, the same one she'd used for 2 years as a waitress. She kept her uniform in her office, cleaned and pressed, as a reminder, not of where she'd been, but of what she'd learned. That sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one everyone assumes has no power at all. Because revolutions aren't always loud. Sometimes they're as quiet as a waitress taking notes, as subtle as a cleaner paying attention, as patient as someone waiting for the perfect moment to show the world that nobody is nobody, and everybody has the power to change everything.